Would you love to have regular mentoring from wise moms like Beth Ann? Join us now in the Restoration Home community. We only open 4 times a year and we're open now. When you join, you get weekly lesson plans with ideas for connecting with the whole family, virtue practices, lesson plans, and beautiful poetry. When you join, you also get access to monthly mentor mom calls with wise mentor moms such as Beth Ann. You get a monthly book club with myself. You get access to regional groups and an invitation to our private Restoration Home retreat held in beautiful Thompson Station, Tennessee. We would love to have you join us and grow in virtue and wisdom together with us in 2026. It's a special community full of wise and intentional moms, but we only open 4 times a year. Save 10% on your membership with code Restoration10. Join today. This is Jennifer Pepito with the Restoration Home podcast. This is the show where we talk about cultivating a flourishing family culture through life-giving habits. Today on the show, I'm so excited to be talking to my friend Beth Ann Menger. She's one of the Restoration Home community mentor moms. She's such a wise leader. She's led several of our mentor mom calls. She's on the Peaceful Press team. And I really wanted you guys to learn from her today because she has some of the best tips I've found for helping young children sit still while you're trying to homeschool them, or developing static meal plans, or even learning how to thrive in a season where you are sleep deprived. So thanks so much for joining me today, Beth Ann.
Oh, Jennifer, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and a privilege to be here.
I'm so thrilled that I get to talk with you today. You have been one of the mentor moms in the Restoration Home community for the last couple years. And I asked you to do that role because every time someone in our first year group, we had this private group and it was almost like a big group chat. And every time somebody asked a question, you had the best answer. Like, you have done so much research on parenting. You've done so you are so wise and so knowledgeable, so educated in a sense. Like, you've really gone after knowing what the best way is to do things with your kids, and really, really practical as well. I just am so thankful for your insight. And then you also spoke at the Restoration Home Community retreat in October, and you shared these beautiful life-giving words of learning to abound even in these seasons where you with a 10-month-old are so sleep deprived. I couldn't believe the poetry that came out of your mouth being as sleep deprived as you are. So tell me a little bit about what drove you to be so knowledgeable that you are like this superstar in our group of wisdom and ideas?
Well, those are very kind and humbling words. And I'm very grateful to hear them spoken over me. So thank you for that, especially coming from you, who I admire so much. Um, well, I mean, the answer is simple. When I became a mom with my oldest, I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know beyond the basic, like caring for basic physical needs. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, well, I have a lot to learn here. And so I'm a reader and can read very quickly and a lot. And I just bought every parenting book that I could get my hands on. And I started listening to podcasts and seeing, like, okay, well, what is this person saying? What does the research say about this? And how can I implement this in my home? I mean, that's the very basic answer. And I was grateful that early on in my motherhood journey, my cousin gave me Simplicity Parenting by Kim John Payne. And that book changed my life. I mean, I know it changes a lot of people's lives when they read it, but I was like, oh, there is something to this. And so I have just, you know, approached it from the angle that I don't know what I'm doing, so let's see what the experts say.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously at this point, you don't just trust the experts in a sense. Like, I feel like that's the beauty of you, is that you're taking all the information, then you are filtering it through your own intuition and wisdom so that what comes out isn't like this kind of messy. Like I see some moms who are trying to just trust the experts and their kids are really difficult to be around and the moms are very insecure, but I feel like you do have your own innate wisdom that and probably that's God, but you know, you're filtering things through so that what comes out is really well thought out and well planned.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, right, not everything's going to work. What I like to do when I find something new is, is this something that makes sense? I'll pray about it. Is this something that God's calling us to do for our family? And is this something that we can apply? And does it make sense to? And sometimes things work in different seasons, and sometimes they don't. We don't have to be, I'm never legalistic about anything. So, it's just kind of like a buffet or a feast, as, as Charlotte Mason would say, um, a feast of like, okay, this seems to work really well. This works really well. This doesn't, and kind of taking what you need and ditching the rest.
Yeah, so good. So tell me a little bit about homeschooling with 5 young kids because that is so many of the Restoration Home community members are homeschooling with young kids. So many of the Peaceful Press families are homeschooling with young kids. And it can feel really intimidating. Like it's so fun. You start out doing preschool, you have your peaceful preschool set up and it's really fun and engaging. Then all of a sudden you're trying to do that and homeschool a child in first, second, third grade going on. And I think a lot of families at this point get so overwhelmed that they even quit and feel like I just can't do this. What are some of the strategies that you've used to like help meet the needs of your little ones while you're also trying to homeschool these older kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, I just want to acknowledge that it is hard. Like there are definitely days, if you homeschool long enough, where you're going to be overwhelmed. Um, Years ago, I read on a travel blog, of which I don't remember where, so I can't cite the source, but she said when traveling with a big group, you have to plan to go at the pace of your slowest member. And I think that applies to your homeschool, that you have to plan the day around your slowest member, which sometimes is the baby, sometimes it's the toddler, whoever is the highest need, that's what your day is going to be planned around. Not that it's all centering around them, but that's the pace that you have to keep. And so um, especially when we're in a baby year. I've got a 10-month-old, so this year we have restructured our schedule almost monthly because in that first year, the development needs change so rapidly, and especially in those toddler years, like what they're able to do or what they're able to tolerate changes month to month, sometimes week to week. And so I think when you're in those seasons, you really have to just have a flexible mindset that it's going to be you're going to have to restructure often. And so if you can find some key anchor points through your day, that restructuring isn't going to feel as turbulent for you. Um, and so just having a flexible mindset with it to start. And then what I would also say is, how are you as the mom starting your day? And I know that everyone always likes to talk about their quiet time. Well, if you're in a season with littles, it's not going to be quiet, but you can still have quiet time. It's just not going to be quiet. And so I always start my day every morning with my Bible study or a devotional. And there are some really short ones you can do if you're really pressed for time. And often my children are awake for that. Sometimes I'm up before them, but a lot of times they're waking up with me or I'm up because the baby's up. And I just do it right in bed. Like it's right on my nightstand. So it's easy. It's 5 minutes. And that just kind of helps my mindset. And I think what a gift to my children for them to be able to be a part of that and to see that. Yeah, usually they are climbing all over me. Like it's not, it's not with like a mug of tea and, birds singing outside. It's not like that. It's chaos. And then from there, I do my workout, my 10-minute workout, which in the Restoration Home community I talk about a lot. It's a 10-minute workout in my pajamas. And usually my children are jumping around like George of the Jungle all around as I'm doing it. But those are two things that I start my day with so that then no matter what happens, I'm like, well, I had time with Jesus and I got some movement in. Whatever else happens, I know that my physical needs were met, my and spiritual needs were met, and we're going to, roll with everything else. And that's really helpful. And it doesn't take long. I'm not doing an hour and a half on the Peloton. I don't have time for that in this season and probably won't for several more years. Um, Another thing I would say if you're in those little years is prep as much as you can in advance. So I prep breakfast the night before, um, I lay out our table the night before. Any like crafts or anything that I need, I pull the supplies and books out ahead of time. And I know that that's an extra step at the end of the day, but it's like that 15 to 20 minutes to do that is going to save you so much time later the next day when your kids are, you know, getting distracted and you're like, "Ah, wait, I've got everything right here. Here, everyone come sit down. We've got the books right here. We've got our read alouds right here." And when I prep breakfast, I just do it when I'm cooking dinner. The kitchen's already a wreck. I'm already cooking, so it's not anything to prep oatmeal or make granola bars or prep smoothies. It's an extra few minutes. Um, and then I would say if you've got older kids that you really need to do some focused work in and you've got little ones, try and really do that focused work during nap time. So just, plan for that around the nap. And on the days when the baby doesn't nap, well, yeah, it's going to be difficult for everyone, and that happens. And that's when, I'll put our youngest in the baby carrier and we do what we can and we know that we'll make it up the next day. Or, we can't be militant about the checklist. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. Like, this said to do this lesson on this day. Well, if you're in a season where you're managing multiple ages, that's just not realistic, and that's not fair to any of your children to get stressed out over that you know um and then getting outside is helpful. I also have what I call a busy toddler cabinet. And if you're familiar with the Instagram account Busy Toddler, she does a lot of sensory bins and a lot of busy toddler activities. And I have a cabinet that I cleared out when my oldest was 4, and that's where I put all the stuff for the sensory bins, anything that can keep a toddler busy. The kinetic sand, the rice, the beans, the measuring spoons, all that stuff is in a cabinet, and it only comes out every once in a while when we need it. So it's a new, fresh thing. It's not something they have access to all the time. So then the toddlers are excited when that comes out because that's their thing to do when you're working with an older child. And so those I would say are like my key tips for getting through each day. And then if you're really in a tight season where you're like, wow, I really have to focus with this older child and I just cannot get this done. This toddler needs a lot more attention than I can give. It's not unreasonable for an afternoon once or twice a week to have a high schooler or, a middle schooler come over to play with your little one for an hour or two so that you can have that time with your older children. Um, so if you're balancing those ages, that's something to do too. And that's something that we've done many times before.
Yeah, this is all such helpful advice. I love your reminder on the evening prep too. That was one of the habits that we did this year in the Restoration Home community is having the a whole month devoted to getting in the habit of prepping the evening before. Because if we sort of have an idea of what's important the next day will go so much smoother. And your morning habits. That another, foundational habit in the Restoration Home community is making sure we get up and do those things in the morning. And also, what you said about when traveling in a group, you have to go at the pace of your slowest member. That's so beautiful. And I talk about that a lot with there's an episode on the blog called 10 Ways to, or it's 10 Ways to Simplify Your Homeschool Routine to Avoid Burnout on the Peaceful Press blog, or 10 Things to Do Before Age 10. But basically, in with our homeschooling, if we did a little extra year of Nourishing Nature Kindergarten or a little extra year of the Peaceful Preschool, and we weren't getting as much done with math and phonics as those older ones, but we were reading aloud every day, we were teaching them how to help out with chores, we were giving them practical skills and habit training, they wouldn't be behind when they get to, when they get to those ages like 8 to 10, they say is these ideal ages to learn math, for instance. Reading comprehension really accelerates the understanding of grammar, like some of the reasoning skills needed for some of these higher level subjects like grammar or math. They take a little more brain maturity anyhow, which is why probably the Finnish schools and the Waldorf schools don't even start teaching reading until kids are in, second grade around age 7. And so if you had to slow things down a little bit in the early years because you had babies, it wouldn't mean that your kids would be behind. You would then batch them and start doing essay writing, a little bit like going right into those older grades, grades 4 to 8 or whatever. Your kids would go right into that math and having more understanding, or the essay writing. My son transitioned from like a more relaxed homeschool to a public charter school with like pretty high academic standards, and it has been a really smooth transition because what we did have is a lot of time reading out loud. So there's a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions, a lot of field trips and nature study, and so many experiences. So then when he went into a more rigorous academic life, it wasn't it wasn't this huge leap because so much of the creativity that underpins those ideas and the ability to communicate were already there. Also, we had a good math tutor or a good math class in middle school. And I think, for those of you homeschooling with multiple ages, especially with a large age span, getting some supplemental help in math might be a good idea because it is something that needs to be taught. Some of these subjects, you need somebody who loves it and knows it to teach it. And that might not always be you. So another of the ideas that we're kind of famous for in our group, that some of the restoration home moms feel like have revolutionized their homeschool. Tia is another one of the restoration home mentor moms, and she was like, "Please have Beth Ann share about family dinner because that's totally one of the most revolutionary ideas that we've taken from the restoration home community. It's really changed our family life." So I'd love for you to talk for a few minutes about family dinner.
Yeah. So family dinner night started 6 years ago, after my husband finished up residency and fellowship, and we had moved to a new place and we were in a new home. And I really felt that our family was missing, because of the nature of his career, we were missing consistent connection points as a family. And I had recently read at that time The Life Giving Table by Sally Clarkson. And I just loved this idea of having the dinner table be this life giving opportunity. But I knew realistically we weren't going to be able to do that every night. I just knew my husband's job just is not, he's not home for dinner the majority of the nights. But I said to him, I said, can we try and aim for this once a week? And he said, okay, let's look at this. Let's look at the schedule. I said, what night do you think you're most likely to be home? Which is always a gamble, but we said, okay, Sunday nights. And so we decided we weren't going to schedule anything Sunday nights ever. And we still do not. We do not schedule things on Sunday nights. If something really important does come up on Sunday nights, that we do have to be at, then we only go if we can move family dinner night to Saturday. Like, it happens every week, unless we're traveling. Like, there are extenuating circumstances. Um, but we've been consistent with it for 6 years, and it has been just such a beautiful time together. And so the way we do it is it's family dinner night. We do it in our dining room, which when we moved into our house, everyone was like, "You're not going to use the dining room. No one uses their dining room." And I was like, "We are going to use our dining room." So every Sunday, I'll make dinner, and sometimes it's a really fancy dinner. Sometimes it is not a fancy dinner. Sometimes it's grilled cheese. It does. That's the dinner is not really the point, but we light candles, we set the table really nicely, and everyone has a different role for the night. And so you'll have to do the math for your own family of how many assignments you need. But in our family, we have prayer, music, dessert, game, story, and inspire or encouragement. And so what that is the person in charge of prayer, they're in charge of leading the prayer. The person in charge of music is in charge of selecting the music that we listen to. Um, and the person in charge of dessert is in charge of making the dessert. And if they're my little ones, they make it with me. My older girls now, I have an 11, 9, 7, 4-year-old and a 10-month-old, but my 11 and 9-year-old, they can bake independently now. They might ask me for help, but this is an opportunity for them to be really creative, and they'll pick out a very elaborate dessert and make that for us when it's their turn. And then game, we'll play a board game or a card game together after dinner. And then who's ever in charge of story, they pick out a story that they want to read together as a family. And then the inspire and encouragement is you have to recognize somebody in the family that really inspired you that week and share why. And so it's just this really beautiful time where there's a strong sense of belonging, a strong sense of significance, and then fun. And so we've really really loved it. And what I love about it is something that I had with the vision of it was that I wanted to have a rhythm for our family that had lasting power into my children's adulthood and that wasn't attached to a holiday, because we have holiday traditions which are great, but God willing, my children are going to grow up, they're going to have families of their own, and they may or may not choose to do some of the stuff we did on the holidays. And I also don't want to become territorial about, you have to spend Christmas with us. Like I want to be able to give them the freedom to love their own families well. And if we're all together for a holiday, wonderful. But I would love if when we're all together on a random Tuesday in July to say, hey, do you want to do a family dinner night tonight? Your family's in charge of prayer. Your family's in charge of the game. Your family's in charge of selecting the story. And it's something that has um, power beyond just this time of us as a family of 7. It has room to grow. And then the other thing also I wanted with it is I wanted to use the stuff that you get for your wedding but never use, like we don't always use the good plates, but we do use the good plates and we light candles. And I've got my candles on the table right now from Tara from Dunridge Farm, those beautiful candles that we've been lighting the last couple of weeks since the retreat. Um, and so I want when my life is over and my children are going through our house, I want them to see the plates and say, "Oh, I remember our family dinners eating off of these." Like I want the things in our home to be used and to have significance and memories to them. And so that by doing that regularly, I'm hoping that it's planting those seeds for that.
Wow, what a beautiful idea. And it's interesting because family dinner nights are one of these cultural factors that prevent children from having all kinds of social ills. Like the simplest thing of just eating dinner as a family lowers your children's risk of drug addiction and obesity and depression. All kinds of social ills are eradicated when you just have dinner as a family. And what a precious anchor for your kids, like growing into adulthood, to be able to look back and say, I belong to this family. Like we had family culture, we had family traditions. And I think that is one of the beautiful ways that you are restoring culture, is just the simplest act of maybe your family even didn't really do special family dinners like that, but you are starting a tradition that your kids can carry on. I love that so much. One of the other things that people have talked about that has really transformed their homes in the restoration home community is some of your static meal plan ideas. And I love this idea, especially when our children are young and we're like out of brain power. We just don't have a lot of creativity. You have something called your static meal plans. And you talked about this in one of the Mentor Mom workshops in the restoration home community. I'd love to have you share that with podcast listeners.
Yeah, the static meal plan was born out of just a need to just kind of quell the chaos in, in our own life. Last summer, or a year and a half ago, in the summer, I was pregnant with our fifth, and I was so tired, and I was tired of making decisions. And I put together a meal plan for breakfast and lunches, and I was just like, "This is what we're eating every day." For breakfast and lunch on these days, and I varied it up, so it wasn't like it's not like we were eating the same thing every single day. But Mondays is granola and yogurt for breakfast. Tuesdays is some sort of muffin or baked good. Wednesdays is oatmeal, and it's just categories. And so there's variety within that. And I did that for breakfast and lunches. And then after my youngest was born in the spring this year, I was like, you know what? I'm doing this for dinners also, because I can't keep coming up with 7 meals every week. So Mondays, it's burger night, and there's plenty of variety within that. You can do, lamb burgers, chicken burgers, turkey burgers. There's tons of variety in this. That's Monday night. Tuesday night, right now in this season in the fall, because of some extracurriculars that we have, Tuesdays and Thursdays are always slow cooker or soup, and I'm glad that it's finally cooling off here so that that's seasonally appropriate. And Wednesdays, we usually do some sort of fish. Fridays, I do out of a cookbook. I'll choose a cookbook that I'm going to pull from. And Saturdays is pasta, and then or leftovers. And Sundays is family dinner night, which there's a little bit more leniency with that. But that's how we do it. And so then I'm not reinventing the wheel every single week. And I even did it all for snacks also, um, because I was tired of well, I don't want this for snack. Well, how come they got that? Well, I don't want this. And then I was making a million different snacks and I was like, that's it. Everyone gets to pick a day where that's their favorite snack and that's what it is. And then it's simplified my grocery list. So I know what that is each week. And so it's just created a lot of simplicity in a very full season of life.
Wow, I love that. And that is one of my, almost a standard for me as well to have as many things static as possible, whether that is putting some groceries onto a subscription so you don't have to buy them all the time, having a static grocery shopping list, having a, weekly rhythm that is completely predictable. The more we can sort of have planned, the less we're gonna have to think in the moment, and the more mental energy we'll have for connecting with our kids or creative ideas. And we actually at the Peaceful Press, we have a free morning and evening routine pack, and it has a weekly planner in there where you could plug in that, your weekly meal plan or your weekly homeschool schedule. Because if we can sort of systematize a little bit more in our lives, whether that is deciding which days you're going to stay home all day, which days you'll do outside activities, what your dinner plan is every day of the week, and just sort of rotating that dinner plan, whatever it is, the more we can have sort of off our plate in terms of decision making, the more easy and peaceful and connected our families can be. And when you have a lot of kids, nothing is ever easy, but just being able to have more space for connection so that later on you have fewer regrets is so important. Beth Ann, we're almost out of time and you've shared so many really practical ideas. I'm so excited for families to listen to this and get started with some of these ideas. Is there any other, words of wisdom, or even we are open in the restoration home community right now, anything you could say about why that would be helpful since you've already shared so many of the great ideas you shared in the group?
Yeah, well, the restoration home community is transformative. Everyone will agree to that. I would say if you are thinking about joining, absolutely do. Um, I would also just say, just kind of echoing what I also talked about this October at the retreat, is that if you are in this season where you've got a wide range of ages and you are sleep deprived and you are really feeling like you are pushed to the brink, just really lean into that and don't grow weary of doing good. Like, just rely on Galatians 6:9 because it is so true, and push yourself because that's where the growth happens, and those short-term gains that you have because you want to take the shortcut because you're so depleted, that will lead to a long-term loss. So really just push yourself for that growth. It will get easier, and don't grow weary of doing the good for your family. It really does matter, and you will reap at the proper time if you do not give up.
Yeah. What do you think is helping you stay so joyful even though you're sleep deprived? Like you always have a smile on your face.
Oh, I don't know about always, but a lot of the times. I think there's a lot of things for that was and one of that is just purely I do believe that God is just really sustaining us through this season. But also, you know, homeschooling really is a delight. And when you choose to really delight in your children, I don't do curriculum that's burdensome to any of us. We use the Peaceful Press. We're doing Playful Pioneers Volume 2. This week we dissected a fish. I had never done that before. That was wild. Okay. We all had the best time. And when you're doing things that are delightful and you're doing activities with your children that where you get to marvel at something, that's going to bring you a lot of joy even when you're sleep deprived and even when it's hard and you are cooking the meals and cleaning the house and doing the millionth load of laundry, but you're like, we just did something really cool today. Like we've had an so I would say you get to be the author of your experiences in your life, and you get to choose how you want to spend your days, and you do not have to do it completely burdened by oppressive curriculum or schedules. You get to decide how you want to spend it, and your children will feel that.
Wow, so good. I think that is really important. I love that obviously love that you mentioned the Peaceful Press, but that I feel like is one of the secret ingredients is joy. When we can enjoy our children and enjoy the homeschool journey, there's going to be so much more connection and confidence nurtured in our children because they will feel like learning is fun and they will feel like they were enjoyed even. And so I'm just so happy that you mentioned that. It's such an important part of our lives to really enjoy our children, to delight in learning with them. I love that you got to dissect for the first time. I think that's one of the things that can really dispel that fear in homeschool moms. It's like, it's okay if you don't know what you're doing because that's part of the fun of it is that you are learning alongside your children and they get to see you model that attitude of like, I don't know what I'm doing either, but we're going to learn together. And how exciting is this to try something new together? I loved you and your girls sewed cloth dolls this year and I got to see the pictures of those. It's been so fun to see all the projects that you guys have made in your years with the Peaceful
I
Press.
was going to mention that the we made the we sewed the cloth dolls and then made the doll quilts, and I had never sewed. My daughter got a sewing machine for Christmas, and I was like, "All right, girls, here we go." We are so proud of those doll quilts, and it was such a bonding experience, and I said, "Y'all will have these for the rest of your lives, and you will give them to your daughters when they play with their dolls." And it was just so fun, and so, I'm a former teacher, and I didn't last very long because there wasn't a lot of that joy, and teachers are amazing, and they're working so hard, but there wasn't a lot of that joy. You are a slave to the standards, and the freedom in what we are doing now has been just transformative, and the learning that's happening, the joy that's paired with it, it it's just been wonderful. So, I'm just so grateful for where we are.
Well, I'm so grateful for you, Beth Ann. You are just a wealth of wisdom. Many of the beautiful Restoration Home community lessons come from Beth Ann's beautiful, organized mind. And we're just so thankful that we get to be on this journey together of learning our children and learning to honor the Lord and bring connection into our family. So thanks for joining me today, Beth Ann.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so grateful for you.